I've been a six-figure investment banker here in London for the last 5 years, and I've seen so many myths online in terms of what it takes to break into finance and actually succeed. So in this video, I'm going to cut through the BS and show you the real truth in terms of what it actually takes. So if you're ambitious, you want to break into finance and succeed, this is the video for you. If you don't know me, I'm Harris Zamir, and I broke into investment banking without a finance degree. In fact, I studied chemistry at Imperial College with zero connection to banking, but I still broke into one of the most competitive industries in the world. Now I help others do the same via charter mastery. Now the first thing I want to call out is, and I've said this before in other videos, but you really don't need to have a finance degree to work in finance. And the reason I'm emphasizing this again is because of the number of times I have this conversation where people ask me what I studied and I say chemistry, and then they're like, okay, what do you do now? And I'm like, finance. And they're like, well, how does that translate? And the reality is that bankers and other financial institutions genuinely don't care what you studied. What they really care about is whether they believe they can teach you, because everything you'll need to actually do the job will be taught on the desk once you've actually got the job. So your job is to convince them that you can actually learn. Now, there are a few natural signals for this. The first one being the university or college, if you're in the US, that you went to. Now, obviously, the better this is, the clearer a signal this is that you can actually learn. Then you have the quality of your degree. Now here, typically, STEM degrees or science, technology, engineering, or mathematical degrees are considered to be better, quote unquote, because they teach skills that are transferable into finance. So these are things like analytical skills, problem solving, research, report writing, and so on. So it's generally easier here to articulate your day one readiness, i.e. what you can bring to the desk on day one if you've done a STEM degree. But that doesn't mean that if you've not done a STEM degree that you can't work in finance. So for example, if you studied something like history, you will have other skills. So again, you probably have good research skills, definitely good report writing and essay writing skills. You probably have good verbal and written communication, but ultimately the point here is if you've done a non-finance and non-STEM degree, then the onus is on you to position your skills more clearly. So just have a think about that. So you have the quality of your university or college and the quality of your degree. And the third way you can sort of naturally signal your ability to learn is through other qualifications, such as professional qualifications, an example of that being the CFA. Beyond all of this, you can then further emphasize your ability to learn through things like courses. So if you've taken financial modeling courses, put those on your CV and on your application, and otherwise projects that you've done. So maybe you've managed your own portfolio, so you might want to put in a test sheet or portfolio performance, etc. within your application. So honestly, stop dwelling on your university or college or your degree. The reality is you can't change these now. The best thing to do is reflect on what you've already done, what skills you have, and learn how to sell these, how to articulate these. We'll talk more about this later in this video, but also at this point, I would cross-reference the skills you have versus the job descriptions of the types of roles you want to apply for. Now, this is sort of creating a skills gap matrix. It's the kind of thing we do for our charter mastery students. But here, I don't really want to dive into how you create that matrix. What I really want to talk about is how you identify the job descriptions or the roles that you actually want to apply for. So the second lesson here really is that investment banking is not the only job in town. And the reason I'm calling this out is because of the number of conversations that I and we have with prospective and current charter mastery clients. And we ask them, what role do you want to do? And their default answer is investment banking or private equity. And we're like, okay, why? And they're like, well, I heard it was good and it pays well. And we're like, okay, but there's loads of other roles out there that are also good and pay well and are generally less competitive, and you stand a much better chance of getting into. So the reality is that you need to broaden the horizons beyond just investment banking and private equity. And I understand this is difficult to do because the reality is that finance as an industry is vast and opaque. Most people don't know what it actually entails, what roles there actually are. So they default to what they see in the movies. So think of Wolf of Wall Street or something like that. They think of investment banking, private equity, and they're like, cool, that sounds sexy. These guys are earning loads of money. So this is what I'm going to go for. But the truth is, those are a small subset of a huge industry, and there's so many other roles that, as I said, many of which are much more accessible, they have better work-life balance, and a lot of them still have amazing pay. Now, to help you with this, I created a role on 7 six-figure finance roles that aren't investment banking, so you should definitely check that out. The link is in the description. Otherwise, I would encourage those of you who want to get into finance to actually do your research, see what other roles are out there, think about the experience that you already have, and where there's some overlaps and you can add day one value. So this is the idea of positioning and career orientation. This can really help you fast track your route into finance, and it's the kind of work that we do for our charter mastery clients, and we aim to take the guesswork out of it. But ultimately, you can do this exercise. I definitely recommend it. Okay, we've discussed the fact that you don't need a finance degree and that investment banking isn't the only role in town. Now, the third thing for me, and this is a huge one, is that life is one big sales pitch, and it took me a long time to work this one out. So early in my career, I had a bit of a shock. So when I first started working, I was surrounded by people, in many instances, and in a non-braggy way, who had worse credentials than me, but they were progressing super quickly, and it was lost on me as to how they were doing that. And the reason for that is, when you're at school, college, university, or whatever you want to call it, the person with the best grades typically gets the most recognition. But the reality is when you start working, this flips on its head. The real world is different. It's a lot more grey. People are much busier. They don't care about you the way teachers care about you. They have their own problems. So the onus is now on you to fully articulate your value at all times. Like, you literally have to scream it, but in a subtle and politically correct way. So you have to be delicate with the way you do it. But you have to go through your life from here on basically shouting like, this is why I'm important, this is the value I bring. And this is a skill, it's essentially sales. And pretty much from here on, life is sales. So you need to track your development, your achievements, and then you need to perfect the art of humble bragging. Now, before you actually land a job, you do this via your CV, cover letter, and through your interview. And at the beginning, this is difficult. You can get better at this, but here's a few common pitfalls. The first one is that your CV reads like a job description. This is so common. And if this is you, your CV is literally going in the bin because you only have 15 seconds to make an impact. So your CV needs to stand out. And in order to do that, every single bullet essentially needs to be framed as achievement, outcome, impact. That's literally it. If it's a description, no one's going to read it. And then when it comes to interviews, in pretty much every single answer, bar a few types of questions, you need to weave in the day one value you're going to bring. So for example, if they ask you, why do you want to work in this team? You'll say, cool, this team is part of this bank. I like this bank because of XYZ reason. I like this team because of XYZ reason. And I think on day one, I'm going to bring this, and here's how I can supplement the team. And this humble bragging doesn't just stop once you've got the job. Even when you're working, you need to track your development, your achievements, and you need to make a habit of shouting about these. So you need to put in meetings, regular meetings with key people like your line manager or your MD, and you need to talk them through what you've accomplished and how you've benefited the team. Otherwise, they won't know about it. And there's people who are doing this really well, and those are the ones who are going to get promoted faster. So you need to make a habit of articulating your value and then asking for raises and promotions. Like, do this often and you'll be on people's radar. They know you're accomplished. Now, this isn't easy, but you can learn it. And this is literally what we teach our Charter Mastery clients. Now, they pay us thousands of dollars for this help, but I did create a free step-by-step blueprint on how to break into investment banking. And within there, I cover this in terms of brand and positioning. And we're sticking with the theme of progression here. And yes, sales is important. Selling yourself is important, but so is networking. And I don't mean schmoozing at conferences. I mean building real relationships with people who will then advocate for you. And this is major key because roles in high finance are not filled via job boards. They are filled via referrals. So when a VP gets a new slot or a new role, they're going to ask the people around them, do you know anyone? And this literally is how it runs on our desk. So almost everyone that we hire, we either already know them or we've spoken to them recently. So you need to be in that conversation if you're going to stand a chance. So let's talk about how you get in that conversation, both before you land a role, but also the importance of networking throughout your career. Now, before you actually land a role, so when you're actively trying to get hired, you need to treat networking like a pipeline. So you need to identify people that you'd like to build a relationship with, try and find some type of common ground. So that might be the university you went to, your interests, the industry that you've worked in, etc. And then you need to develop your cold outreach. Now here you need to stay resilient because many people won't reply, but those who do are the ones you need to move through the funnel. So you want to move them from cold to warm to hot, where ultimately they will advocate for you. And you need to build a system around this. So initially you want to send out a value-led, concise message, and then you want to track responses and follow up consistently. Eventually you'll have a few warm leads, and those are the ones that are going to help you land the interviews. Now again, at CM, we help build this outreach rhythm and advocacy list, and I also covered it in detail in my Breaking Into Investment Banking video, so definitely check that out. Now more broadly, whether you're trying to land a job or generally network throughout your career, you need to remember that networking is all about being likable and adding value. It's not about handing out business cards. You need to be authentic and connect with people, and for that, you want to build your confidence, practice your public speaking, develop your interests, and generally be good at having conversations. Now, I'm not going to go into how to do this in detail, but if you'd like to see some content on this, drop a comment below. Okay, the next big lesson is that compounding beats intensity. So daily reps are what stack up, and are the biggest differentiator in life. And honestly, the question here is, can you stay the course? Honestly, most people quit after a bit of hardship in life, but the reality is anything worth having requires you to stay the course. So generally speaking, for me, I view things on a 3-year timeline. So university took 3 years, the CFA took just under 3 years, and my YouTube journey is currently sort of 2 years in. I'm viewing everything on a 3-year timeline. After then, I will truly assess. Now, of course, 3 years is a long time. You don't want to do exactly the same thing for 3 years, but if you can lock in, work hard, iterate and learn from each step of the process, everything will get easier and better. Most people have an idea, they work hard for a few weeks, and when they don't see results, they fall away. But the truth is, everything worth having in life requires sustained commitment. For me, CFA level 1 was tough, but I stayed the course, it got easier, and then level 2 and 3 were generally more straightforward because I developed a rhythm. Same thing with YouTube. The first 6 months were honestly demoralizing. You don't get many views. You don't really know what your niche is, but you stay the course, you iterate, things become clearer over time. So if you want something, like seriously want something, understand that it's going to take time, but break up the timeline into achievable milestones and then take action consistently. That's literally how we view the process of breaking into finance. We break up the timeline into various stages. Each stage has associated actionable steps. And then the key is making those steps, doing those things, and those will gradually move you towards your goal. If you want to know what that step-by-step process looks like, check out my Breaking into Investment Banking blueprint, for which the link is below. Okay, the final big lesson is, and arguably I don't think it should be at the bottom of this list because it's so important, but develop a bias for imperfect action. I literally can't emphasize how important this is, and it's something that I'm still trying to improve all the time, but a lot of us have the tendency to analyze from the sidelines, trying to find the perfect first step, and unless we find that, we don't take action. And the truth is, life just doesn't work that way. For those of us who are perfectionists, this is a big issue, and no doubt there'll be people out there who are thinking about applying for a role in finance, but they don't know what the perfect first role is, so they're not taking the step. And the truth is, if you're a fresh graduate or you're somebody who's looking to transition into finance, you probably don't even know what the roles entail, and that's totally normal. When I first started my career journey, I had no idea what leverage finance was. I pretty much didn't know what most of banking was. And so I couldn't envisage that I would be working there in the end. The truth is, you have to just start somewhere and then iterate on the fly. You learn from the process. Analyzing job descriptions and speaking to people can only take you so far. Eventually, you have to step into the ring and experience real feedback. And that feedback is going to trigger the butterfly effect. And other things, other opportunities, other knowledge, other pathways will open up that you can't envisage on day one. The brain doesn't really have capacity to think about second and third order effects of our actions. So you can kind of analyze what the immediate consequence might be, but beyond that, you have no idea what's going to happen. And it's those second, third order effects that are ultimately going to determine where you end up in your career. So the best thing to do is to actually get cracking, to jump in, to apply for things, to experience interviews. And through that process, you'll get a bit more clarity on what type of company you want to work for, what kind of people you want to work with, what kind of roles you want to do. But just get in the ring. In business, there's this concept of the minimum viable product. And my partner's always banging on about this to me, and he's so much better at this than me. And it is that you essentially, you want to first make something exist, then make it good. So all of us have a tendency to try and create the perfect version 1, but honestly, it's counterproductive and it will slow progress down. So create the minimum viable version 1 and then learn from that, improve, get feedback, etc., and then create version 2, 3, etc. So same concept can be applied to your career. Start somewhere, pick some roles, apply, submit your CV, then improve your CV, so on and so forth. So pick a lane in finance, any lane in finance if you don't know where to start, then develop your signals in terms of your capacity to learn and what you can bring to the role on day one, build your network, and then stack those daily reps. And if you do this over a long time frame, you're probably a lot closer than you think. Now, if you want to learn more about careers in finance, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel and watch the next video. See you there.